I am going to do a bit which I should have done before I started doing the damage. We're talking transfers. Now I've got some transfers here. These are the transfers that I have. I've got some Mechanicus ones because I think some of the warning symbols will be pretty cool to put onto elements of the actual model. And I've got some from the Necromunda, the Cargo 8 Ridgeholder set. I quite like to use maybe some of the logos from this because I think that this kind of represents a bit more of a gang mentality, which in my opinion is what a cult starts as. Yes, I have used some of these already. I'm going to put those onto here in various different locations, and then I'm going to have to do the I'm going to have to redo some of the damage, the battle damage that they've already received. Yep, that's my fault. You should have done that first. If you're watching this to completion before following the tutorial, get this bit done before you actually put on any little speckles of battle damage, because it works. Putting the battle damage over the transfer always works. Kind of keeps it on a little bit as well. Right, let's get some transfer application done. So the first step with applying transfers onto your actual model is to figure out what transfers you want to go on there. So these are ridge holders. They're going to be, in my mind, always try and create a narrative for whatever you're painting. If it's an Imperial Guard, you're going to have a narrative regarding regiment, which will help with things like this. So for me, these are going to be ex-Mechanicus, maybe Explorer vehicles, or just civilian vehicles made by the Mechanicus. They're probably going to have some Mechanicus warning symbols on there, mainly probably near engine housings or things of that nature. Hence why I'm going to go for some Mechanicus transfers. And I also like the idea that miners, for example, probably end up being a little bit Necromundian. I like these little numbers, and I may actually use these for kind of like vehicle identification down the actual side itself. I'm not going to go as far as putting a number plate on, but effectively you can do with some of these. These are actually look really cool with maybe some form of identification marker on there. Why do I put these on is sometimes a question I get asked when I'm at my local club, and the reason is that it actually makes things look good. Genuinely makes things look good. So we're just deciding what we're going to be doing, and then let's start getting the process on. So the transfers I've ultimately gone for is a couple of warning symbols from the Mechanicus one. We've got this tiny little skull. I've got one of the symbols from the Necromunda box, which you can't really see it on the camera, but it's like a fist with the chains around it. And we've gone for a designation, which is K2. So what I'm going to do with these is that the gang symbol is going to go on here. That'll break up the fact that that's a really big panel with nothing a lot on. We're going to go for the K2 here, which will be the front forward identification. The little skull is just going to go down here again because we've got a large panel. It's just mainly just emptiness, and I don't really want to be putting stripes and things of that nature on there because I don't want to mess it up. So a lot of the time with transfers, it's because I don't want to mess things up, but I actually use them. Don't forget that that is still removable. And I'm going to go for a warning as well on here. So one of these warning symbols is going to kind of go into that corner, just kind of warning people. And normally I would put warning symbol maybe on the mining lasers, but as you can see from the mining laser itself, it's very small, and I don't really have transfers that'll match that, and I don't want to ruin it by doing freehand and the freehand not working out and me having to repaint it all. Again, we're trying to get these done quick. Oh yeah, and I've made sure there's a second set to go onto the other Ridgerunner when I've done. So every man and the dog are going to have their own way of making sure transfers are going onto the models. Myself, I just prefer to do this method. This is a method that I've done for a long time. Some people get a little ball of water to put transfer into. I much prefer to use a rolled up, it's like a sheet of kitchen roll that I've folded about 4 times. I then put it over pieces down, and then I've got an old, this is my kind of like my old water bottle. It's an old sort of like floor improver bottle from the airbrush range, and I just fill it with water, just normal water. Don't bother kettle or anything, it's just standard water, and I just pour it on, soak in the actual transfer, getting it off the backing. Now this stops sometimes that little bit, you know, where you get the it starts to float on top of the water if you put it into a saucer. Prepping the actual area, we're going to be using some micro sol and micro set. These are quite easy to purchase from your local hobby store or even Amazon. And I'll normally put on micro set to start with. I'll just put a little bit on the actual area where I'm going to be putting on, these onto. I then might put a little bit more on top, and then we'll use Sol a couple of times just to try and, it depends on, using the amount of Sol will depend on where the location is. Now this mainly is flat, there's not a lot of curvature, there is there, but it's kind of a slight curve, so the transfer should go on nicely. If it's a space marine shoulder pad, you might want to use a lot of micro Sol to really soften that decal so that you can actually get that decal all the way across without those little ridges or folds that you sometimes end up having with transfers. Once it's ready, I will try and take the transfer off. I've got a medium layer brush here, and I will attempt to put it onto my model. Now, I'm going to try and keep this as live as I can, because I've got a funny feeling I'm going to mess it up. Always give liquids a nice bit of a shake, unless they're explosive. So I'm going to go for a K2 first, because that's going to be the easiest one to apply. Come on. I've painted a larger square just in case it decides to try and change what. So that's definitely coming off nicely. Now I push off onto the brush like so. Hit model. A little bit more micro set so that I can put it on top, and then we can adjust. Kind of using the bristles as I push. And try and drag it. Just gently push to where you want it to be. Now give that a minute, and then grab some other kitchen roll or high quality. Don't use tissue paper because sometimes it can come off. I've got this really old, really nice napkin I actually got from a pub years ago, but it's like really thick and it's fantastic for absorbing and not hurting the actual model itself. And just dab that off. And once you've dabbed that off, apply the rest of the transfers, give it 20 minutes, then put micro Sol on, then give it an hour and maybe do another layer of micro Sol. Then check it out and have a look at what it's doing. Now, because I'm putting this on now, before the end process, be careful when picking the model up, be careful when maneuvering the model, because sometimes, because you've not put a setting agent over the top, which we're going to be using with varnish, you can accidentally rub it off. So now let's get a little tiny bit of micro Sol on there. And all we're doing is putting it onto top of a transfer like we did before, into the area. And then give that about an hour, and then kind of sponge it, and then if it needs to change, transform, you'll be fine. I don't think these are going to need that much, if I'm completely honest.